over 50 or 60, there is one thing you do every single night that could quietly increase your risk of a stroke while you sleep. No pain, no warning signs, no obvious signal that anything is wrong. You go to bed feeling perfectly normal, but by morning, something may have changed. You wake up feeling confused, your words come out slurred, your arm feels heavy and refuses to lift. In some cases, a person cannot stand, cannot speak clearly, or cannot recognize what is happening. A stroke has occurred overnight, silent, sudden, life-altering. What surprises many people is that sometimes it isn't triggered by something dramatic like smoking, extreme stress, or a poor diet. In some cases, the risk increases because of something much simpler: the way you sleep. After decades of working with patients and studying the brain, I have seen a pattern that shocks many families. Certain sleeping positions and nighttime habits can quietly place pressure on blood vessels, interfere with circulation, or trigger sudden spikes in blood pressure while the body is supposed to be resting. And for older adults, the brain becomes more vulnerable to these changes. As we age, blood vessels naturally become less flexible. Arteries can narrow, blood pressure tends to fluctuate more easily. The delicate network of vessels that supplies oxygen to the brain becomes more sensitive to even small disturbances in circulation. That means something as ordinary as neck position, breathing patterns during sleep, or the way your head rests on a pillow can sometimes influence how blood flows to the brain throughout the night. Most people never think about this. They simply lie down in whatever position feels comfortable and fall asleep. But night after night, the same position can quietly affect blood flow, oxygen levels, and pressure inside the blood vessels that feed the brain. In the majority of cases, nothing dramatic happens. But in some individuals, especially those over 60 with high blood pressure, heart rhythm problems, diabetes, or narrowing of the arteries, these small nighttime stresses can become the tipping point. A stroke does not always happen during the day. In fact, a surprising number of strokes occur during sleep. Doctors sometimes call them wake-up strokes because the person goes to bed feeling completely normal and wakes up with symptoms that have already begun. By the time the person realizes something is wrong, the stroke has already occurred hours earlier. That is why understanding what happens during sleep is so important. Tonight, I want to walk you through several sleeping positions and nighttime habits that may quietly increase stroke risk in older adults. These are not extreme behaviors. In fact, they are incredibly common routines that millions of seniors follow every night, believing they are completely safe. Some involve how the neck is positioned on the pillow. Others involve breathing patterns, circulation in the arms and shoulders, or pressure on the arteries that supply blood to the brain, and a few of them are so common that many people will recognize themselves immediately. The goal here is not to frighten you, it is to give you awareness, because once you understand how certain sleeping positions affect the brain, small adjustments can make a significant difference. A simple change in how you rest your head, support your neck, or position your body at night may improve circulation, reduce pressure on sensitive blood vessels, and protect your brain while you sleep. Think of your brain as a city that must receive a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients. Even while you sleep, billions of neurons remain active. They regulate breathing, control heart rhythm, consolidate memory, and maintain vital functions that keep the body alive. If the supply lines feeding that city are restricted, even temporarily, the consequences can be serious. That is why the hours you spend asleep are not passive for the brain. They are actually one of the most delicate periods of the entire day, and really true for seniors. During sleep, blood pressure naturally fluctuates. Breathing patterns change. Some people experience brief drops in oxygen levels, especially if they snore or have mild sleep apnea without realizing it. Combine those factors with certain sleeping positions, and you can create a situation where the brain receives less oxygen or experiences sudden pressure changes in blood vessels. Over time, those nightly stresses can increase the likelihood of a vascular event such as a stroke or brain bleed. The good news is that many of these risks can be reduced with simple awareness and small adjustments. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 9 sleeping positions and nighttime habits that may increase stroke risk for older adults. Some will surprise you, a few may challenge habits you followed for years, but understanding them could protect your brain in ways you may never have considered. If you or someone you love is over 60, pay close attention. The information in this video could help prevent a life-changing medical emergency. And before we go deeper, if you haven't already subscribed, consider joining the channel and turning on notifications. The goal here is simple: to share practical, research-based health information designed specifically for adults over 50 and 60 who want to protect their brain, heart, and long-term independence. Also, I'm curious about something. After watching this video, let me know in the comments how you usually sleep. Do you sleep on your back, your side, or your stomach? Type 1 if you normally sleep on your side. Type 2 if you sleep on your back. Type 3 if you sleep on your stomach. Your answer might reveal more about your brain health than you think. Now, let's begin with the first sleeping position that may quietly increase stroke risk for seniors, and why so many people use it without realizing what it might be doing to their brain overnight. Number 1. Let's begin with the first sleeping position that many people believe is perfectly harmless: sleeping flat on your back with no pillow, your head resting at the same level as your body. For many older adults, this position feels natural. You lie on your back, your arms resting at your sides, your head directly on the mattress or supported by only the thinnest pillow. Some people developed this habit decades ago. Others say it helps their back feel straighter or allows their chest to open more comfortably while they breathe. On the surface, it seems calm and relaxing. But from a neurological and circulatory standpoint, this position may not be as harmless as it appears, especially for people over 60. When you sleep completely flat, your head sits at the same level as your heart. That might sound like a balanced position, but the human body does not always function best in perfect symmetry, particularly as we age. Over time, the blood vessels that supply the brain gradually lose flexibility. Arteries become stiffer. The walls of those vessels may thicken, and blood flow through them becomes slightly less efficient. This is a natural part of aging, but it means the brain becomes more sensitive to even small changes in circulation. While arteries carry oxygen-rich blood up to the brain, veins must carry used blood back down toward the heart. This drainage system is extremely important because the brain must constantly remove carbon dioxide, metabolic waste, and excess fluid in order to function properly. When you lie completely flat, that drainage process becomes slightly less efficient. Instead of gravity helping blood move away from the brain, the system must work harder to maintain smooth circulation. For younger people with very flexible blood vessels, the body usually compensates without difficulty. But in older adults, especially those with high blood pressure, atrial fibrillation, narrowing of the carotid arteries, or other vascular conditions, this flat position can allow blood to move more slowly through delicate areas of the brain. And when blood flow slows, the risk of clot formation increases. The early morning hours can be particularly sensitive. During sleep, the body naturally becomes slightly dehydrated. Blood can thicken modestly overnight, and blood pressure often begins rising again toward morning as the body prepares to wake. If circulation is already sluggish in certain vessels, these combined factors can create conditions where a clot forms silently during sleep. A small clot inside a narrowed artery may remain unnoticed at first, but if it blocks blood flow to a region of the brain, the result can be sudden and devastating. Slurred speech, weakness on one side of the body, facial drooping, confusion, or loss of mobility. To illustrate how subtle these risks can be, I want to share a story that reflects a pattern many clinicians have observed. A man in his late 70s, let's call him Leonard, was known by his neighbors as someone who was always active. He had spent most of his life working with his hands, repairing engines and maintaining small machines in his garage even after retirement. For decades, he followed the same nighttime routine. Every evening, he lay flat on his back without a pillow, just the mattress beneath his head and his hands resting comfortably on his chest. He had learned the habit many years earlier and believed it helped him sleep deeply. One morning, his wife noticed something was wrong. Leonard was awake but unable to speak clearly. One side of his face had drooped and he struggled to lift his arm. At the hospital, imaging revealed that a clot had blocked blood flow in one of the major arteries supplying his brain. It was the type of stroke that often occurs when circulation becomes sluggish in narrowed vessels, allowing blood to clot where it shouldn't. Doctors treated him quickly, and the clot was eventually dissolved. But Leonard's recovery was incomplete. His speech became slower, and walking required support that he had never needed before. Later, his family learned that his arteries had already become stiff from age-related vascular changes. The flat sleeping position likely contributed to slower drainage and circulation during the night. Now, his bedtime routine looks very different. Each night, his head is gently elevated with supportive pillows that lift the upper body slightly, allowing gravity to assist circulation instead of working against it. Many people assume sleeping position is only about comfort. In reality, it also influences circulation, breathing, and pressure within the blood vessels that feed the brain. When the head is slightly elevated, usually around 20 to 30 degrees, it helps blood drain more smoothly from the brain and reduces pressure inside delicate vessels. This small change can also support better oxygen flow during sleep, especially for people who snore or experience mild breathing interruptions at night. The adjustment does not require anything complicated. Even one or two well-placed pillows can create a gentle incline that supports the natural curve of the neck and keeps the airway open. The key is choosing a pillow that supports the neck without forcing the chin downward toward the chest. A good pillow should maintain a neutral position where the neck remains aligned with the spine. For many seniors, this simple change may reduce strain on blood vessels and promote healthier circulation while sleeping. When we talk about stroke prevention, people often think about diet, exercise, and medications, and those are all incredibly important. But the body spends nearly a third of its life asleep. What happens during those hours matters just as much as what happens during the day. Protecting the brain is not only about what you do while you are awake, it is also about how you allow your body to rest. And while sleeping flat on the back can quietly affect circulation, there is another position that may place even more strain on the arteries supplying the brain. It is a position that millions of people use every night, without realizing how much pressure it can place on the neck and the blood vessels that feed the brain. That position is sleeping face down. And what happens to your neck and arteries in that posture may surprise you. Number 2. Now let's move to the second sleeping position that deserves serious attention, especially for adults over 60. Sleeping face down, also known as the prone position. Many people fall into this habit without ever questioning it. It often begins years earlier. Some people discover that sleeping on their stomach seems to relieve lower back discomfort. Others enjoy the gentle pressure on the chest or the feeling of being wrapped closely by the mattress and blankets. It can feel secure, familiar, and deeply relaxing. Because of that comfort, most people never consider that this position may quietly place stress on the brain and the blood vessels that supply it. But from a neurological and circulatory perspective, sleeping face down can create several conditions that are far from ideal, particularly for older adults whose vascular system has already changed with age. To understand why, it helps to picture what actually happens to the body in this position. When you lie face down, your airway cannot remain centered. In order to breathe, your head must rotate to one side. That means the neck is twisted for hours at a time. While this may seem minor, the neck contains some of the most important arteries in the body, vessels responsible for delivering oxygen-rich blood to the brain. Among these are the vertebral arteries, which travel upward through the cervical spine before joining to supply the back portion of the brain. This region controls balance, coordination, spatial awareness, and several vital functions that keep the body stable. When the neck remains sharply rotated during sleep, pressure can develop around these arteries. In some individuals, this rotation may partially reduce the flow of blood moving upward toward the brain. At the same time, the front of the neck may press into the pillow or mattress, depending on how the body is positioned. This can place subtle pressure on the carotid arteries, which supply a large portion of blood to the brain's frontal regions responsible for speech, thinking, and voluntary movement. In younger adults with flexible vessels and strong circulation, the body often compensates without difficulty. But aging changes the equation. As we grow older, arteries gradually stiffen. Plaque may accumulate inside vessel walls, narrowing the pathways that blood travels through. Circulation becomes less forgiving of compression, twisting, or prolonged pressure. That means a sleeping position that seemed harmless at 30 may create significant strain at 70. Another factor often overlooked is breathing. When someone sleeps face down, the chest is pressed into the mattress, which can slightly restrict how fully the lungs expand. For some people, this leads to shallow breathing throughout the night. Oxygen levels may drop modestly while carbon dioxide levels rise. Under normal circumstances, the body adjusts automatically. But during deep sleep stages, particularly in older adults, those adjustments may occur more slowly. If oxygen levels fall repeatedly during the night, the brain experiences subtle stress. Blood vessels react by tightening or dilating in an attempt to regulate oxygen delivery. Over time, these repeated fluctuations can destabilize circulation in individuals who already have fragile vascular systems. This becomes even more concerning in people who snore heavily or have undiagnosed sleep apnea. In these cases, breathing may briefly stop dozens of times throughout the night. Each pause reduces oxygen flow to the brain and places additional strain on the heart and blood vessels. When that pattern combines with the prone sleeping position, the result can be a perfect storm of restricted circulation, reduced oxygen, and vascular instability. Let me share an example that illustrates how quietly these risks can develop. An older woman in her early 80s had spent most of her life sleeping on her stomach. She had done so for decades because she believed it helped her back feel more comfortable at night. It had become such a normal part of her routine that she never considered changing it. One morning, her daughter discovered something was wrong. She was awake, but her speech was garbled, and she struggled to move one side of her body. She was rushed to the hospital where imaging revealed a stroke affecting the back portion of the brain responsible for coordination and balance. Further evaluation showed that her arteries had narrowed over time, a common change associated with aging. Doctors suspected that the prolonged neck rotation and reduced circulation during sleep had contributed to the conditions that allowed a clot to form. She survived, but her life changed dramatically. Activities she once enjoyed, driving, walking confidently outside, moving freely through her home, became far more difficult. When we later discussed her sleeping habits, she said something many patients say after such events. She had never imagined that the way she slept could influence the health of her brain. This is an important point to understand. Sleeping positions alone rarely cause a stroke by themselves. However, when they interact with other risk factors such as stiff arteries, high blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms, dehydration, or nighttime oxygen drops, they can become part of the chain of events that leads to a vascular emergency. The science behind this is straightforward. When the neck remains rotated for long periods, blood flow through the vertebral arteries may decrease. Pressure on the chest can reduce lung expansion, lowering oxygen saturation slightly. Reduced airflow can lead to carbon dioxide buildup, which further affects blood vessel behavior in the brain. For younger bodies, these changes are usually corrected quickly. But in older adults, the body's response time is slower. The brain may tolerate oxygen fluctuations less effectively. What a 30-year-old might correct instantly by shifting position may pass unnoticed in someone in their 70s or 80s. This is especially true for individuals who take sedatives, sleep medications, or medications that deeply relax the nervous system. These drugs can reduce the brain's ability to detect breathing disruptions or uncomfortable positions during sleep. If you regularly sleep face down, it may be worth considering a gradual transition to a safer alternative. One of the most protective positions for circulation is sleeping on the side with the head supported by a firm pillow that keeps the neck aligned with the spine. This allows the airway to remain open and reduces twisting of the neck arteries. Some specialists also recommend a slight elevation of the upper body, which can help maintain smoother blood flow and reduce pressure on the vessels that feed the brain. These adjustments do not require dramatic changes. Often, it is simply a matter of training the body to adopt a different posture with the help of supportive pillows. At first, it may feel unfamiliar, but over time, most people adapt, and many even report improved breathing and more restful sleep. The important thing to remember is that comfort alone should not be the only factor guiding how we sleep, especially later in life. Our sleeping position influences circulation, oxygen levels, and the delicate blood vessels that keep the brain alive. What feels cozy for a few hours at night may quietly place strain on the very arteries that sustain memory, movement, and independence. And while sleeping face down can affect blood flow in subtle ways, there is another nighttime habit that millions of seniors develop without realizing it can restrict circulation even more. It often happens when someone tries to relieve hip pain or shoulder discomfort while sleeping on their favorite side. Unfortunately, that position can sometimes compress important blood vessels and nerves for hours at a time, quietly affecting circulation to the brain. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Number 3. Now let's talk about the third nighttime habit that may quietly affect brain health, especially in older adults. It's something surprisingly common, something many people do without even thinking about it: sleeping with a blanket pulled over the head. For many seniors, this habit goes back decades. Some people began doing it as children in colder homes where heavy quilts provided warmth during winter nights. Others discovered that covering the head helped block out light, soften outside noise, or create a sense of calm and privacy while falling asleep. There is something deeply comforting about that cocoon-like feeling. Wrapped in warmth, shielded from distractions, the world outside seems to disappear. Many people say they sleep more peacefully that way, but as the body ages, this simple habit can begin to affect something much more important than comfort: the air you breathe during the night. When a thick blanket or quilt covers the head, the small space around the nose and mouth gradually becomes restricted. Instead of breathing fresh air circulating through the room, the body begins to rebreathe the same air over and over again. With each breath, oxygen levels in that small pocket decrease slightly. At the same time, carbon dioxide, the gas your body naturally exhales, begins to accumulate. In younger individuals, the body usually compensates quickly. The brain senses the shift in oxygen and carbon dioxide levels and triggers small adjustments in breathing or body position. But as we grow older, those responses can become slower and less sensitive. That means a senior sleeping under heavy covers may spend hours breathing air with gradually declining oxygen levels. For the brain, oxygen is not optional. It is essential for every single process that keeps you alive. Throughout the night, even while you sleep, billions of brain cells remain active. They regulate breathing, maintain heart rhythm, consolidate memory, and repair the microscopic damage that occurs throughout the day. All of these processes depend on a steady supply of oxygen. When oxygen levels drop repeatedly during sleep, even mildly, the brain experiences stress. Blood vessels react to these changes by tightening and relaxing in an attempt to regulate oxygen delivery. The heart may begin beating faster to compensate. Blood pressure can fluctuate as the body tries to maintain balance. Over time, these fluctuations place strain on delicate blood vessels, particularly in people whose arteries have already stiffened with age. Another factor is circulation. When oxygen levels fall, the body sometimes responds by altering the thickness and flow characteristics of blood. In individuals who are already dehydrated or who have slower circulation, this can contribute to conditions where blood becomes more prone to clotting. If a clot forms inside a vulnerable vessel in the brain, the result can be a stroke. To illustrate how quietly this risk can develop, consider the story of an older gentleman who had spent most of his life sleeping with the blankets pulled over his head. He had done it for as long as he could remember. During the winter months especially, he liked the warmth and darkness it created. It helped him fall asleep quickly, and it felt like a safe, familiar routine that had never caused problems before. One morning, his wife noticed something unusual. He was still in bed long after his usual waking time. When she tried to wake him, he seemed confused and sluggish. His speech was unclear, and he struggled to respond normally. At the hospital, doctors discovered that he had experienced a small stroke during the night. His oxygen levels when paramedics arrived were significantly lower than expected. After careful evaluation, it became clear that restricted airflow during sleep may have contributed to the conditions that allowed the stroke to occur. He survived and eventually recovered much of his function, but the experience changed the way he approached sleep. Today, he no longer covers his head at night. Instead, he focuses on maintaining a sleep environment that allows fresh air to circulate freely while still keeping him comfortable. This story highlights something important. The brain requires consistent oxygen during sleep, particularly during deep sleep stages when important repair processes occur. If breathing is restricted, even slightly, for long periods, the brain may not receive the oxygen supply it needs. Medical research has shown that even mild nighttime oxygen reduction can be associated with higher risks of stroke, memory decline, and other neurological problems in older adults. And this risk is not limited only to people with diagnosed sleep disorders. Anyone who regularly restricts airflow during sleep, whether through posture, environment, or bedding, may unintentionally place stress on the brain. The good news is that preventing this problem is simple. If you have the habit of pulling blankets over your head, consider alternative ways to create a comfortable sleeping environment. A soft sleep mask can block light effectively. Earplugs or gentle background noise can reduce sound disturbances. Adjusting the room temperature or using breathable bedding can maintain warmth without restricting airflow. These small changes may seem insignificant, but they help ensure that the air you breathe throughout the night remains fresh and oxygen-rich. Sleep should be a time when the brain restores itself, repairs damaged cells, and prepares the body for another day. Restricting airflow can interfere with that process. Comfort matters, but oxygen matters far more. Many people only realize the importance of these habits after something serious happens. By then, they often wish they had known earlier that such a simple routine could influence their health. But covering the head with blankets is only one example of how nighttime habits can affect circulation and brain function. There is another extremely common habit that millions of older adults adopt without realizing the pressure it places on blood vessels and nerves. It often happens when someone lies on their side and tucks their arm under the pillow or beneath their head for comfort. At first, it feels harmless. In fact, many people say it helps them relax. But the way that arm position affects circulation and what it can do to blood flow toward the brain during the night may surprise you. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Number 4, sleeping upright in a recliner. As we continue, let's talk about another nighttime habit that has become increasingly common among older adults, sleeping upright in a recliner. For many seniors, sleep becomes more complicated with age. It's not just about falling asleep anymore. It's about finding a position that doesn't trigger pain, stiffness, or breathing discomfort. Aching joints, lower back pain, hip problems, acid reflux, and even mild shortness of breath can make lying flat in bed feel uncomfortable. So a recliner chair begins to feel like the perfect solution. The chair supports the back. The legs are elevated, the body is cushioned and slightly upright. Some people add a soft blanket, dim the lights, and let the television play quietly in the background. Over time, what starts as an occasional nap slowly becomes a nightly routine. In fact, many older adults eventually abandon their bed altogether and begin sleeping in a recliner every night. At first glance, it seems like a harmless adjustment, simply a comfortable way to rest. But from a neurological and circulatory perspective, sleeping upright in a reclined chair can gradually place the body in a position that increases the risk of circulation problems during the night. The human body was designed to sleep in a relatively horizontal position. When the body lies flat or slightly elevated, blood and oxygen can move more evenly throughout the circulatory system. The heart does not have to fight gravity as aggressively to maintain balanced blood flow between the brain and the lower body. But when a person sleeps in a recliner, especially at an angle of 45 to 60 degrees, the dynamics of circulation begin to change. Gravity starts pulling blood downward toward the lower half of the body. Blood returning from the legs must work harder to travel back toward the heart. At the same time, veins in the hips and thighs may experience subtle compression depending on how the chair supports the body. For younger individuals with flexible blood vessels and strong circulation, the body usually compensates for these changes without much difficulty. However, after the age of 60, several physiological changes make this position more problematic. Blood vessels naturally lose elasticity with age, circulation slows slightly, the heart may not pump with the same efficiency it once did. Dehydration also becomes more common in older adults, which can make blood slightly thicker during long periods of rest. When blood pools in the lower limbs for hours at a time, the risk of clot formation increases. Most of the time, these clots remain small and harmless, but occasionally, a clot can travel upward through the bloodstream. If it reaches the brain and blocks a vessel that supplies oxygen to brain tissue, the result can be a stroke. The frightening part is that this process can happen silently during sleep. A person may drift off in a comfortable chair, unaware that circulation in their legs has slowed for hours. By the time they wake up or attempt to stand, symptoms may already have begun. Let me share a situation that reflects what clinicians sometimes observe in older patients. A woman in her late 70s had begun sleeping in a recliner after undergoing hip surgery. At first, it was only temporary. Lying flat in bed caused too much discomfort, so the chair seemed like a practical solution. But as months passed, the recliner became her permanent sleeping place. She adjusted the angle just enough to feel supported. Each night, she wrapped herself in a blanket and slept there until morning. Occasionally, she noticed her ankles swelling slightly by the end of the day, and she sometimes felt lightheaded when standing up in the morning. At the time, these symptoms seemed minor. Then, one morning, her daughter noticed something was wrong. She was still sitting in the chair, awake but confused. Her speech sounded slightly slurred, and she struggled to move one of her hands. At the hospital, imaging revealed a small stroke affecting a deep area of the brain supplied by tiny blood vessels. Doctors found no major heart rhythm abnormalities and no large arterial blockages. What they did observe was reduced circulation and swelling in the lower legs, signs that blood had likely been pooling in the lower body during prolonged upright sleep. While the recliner itself did not directly cause the stroke, the long-term sleeping position likely contributed to the circulatory conditions that allowed a clot to form. Situations like this highlight an important truth about aging bodies. When we remain in the same position for many hours, especially in a posture that alters blood flow, small physiological stresses can accumulate. Over time, those stresses may contribute to serious events. Another factor involves the body's natural system for regulating blood pressure. When we lie down to sleep, the brain and heart communicate constantly through specialized sensors that help maintain stable blood pressure. This system works best when the body is relatively horizontal. In an upright position, that balance becomes more difficult to maintain. Blood pressure may fluctuate more dramatically, particularly in older adults who take medications for hypertension or heart conditions. If dehydration, swelling, or restricted leg movement are also present, the circulatory system faces multiple challenges at once. This does not mean that sitting in a recliner occasionally is dangerous. Many people safely rest or nap in chairs every day. The concern arises when a recliner becomes the primary sleeping location night after night, with little movement for long periods. If sleeping flat in bed is uncomfortable due to reflux, breathing issues, or back pain, there are safer alternatives. An adjustable bed that raises the upper body slightly can provide support while still allowing the body to remain mostly horizontal. A firm wedge pillow can elevate the torso without compressing the lower limbs or restricting circulation in the hips and thighs. Regular leg movement before bed and gentle stretching during the day can also help maintain healthy blood flow. For the woman mentioned earlier, returning to a bed with supportive pillows and improved circulation habits made a significant difference in her comfort and stability. She later reflected that she believed the recliner was helping her body rest. She had never imagined that the same position could slowly interfere with circulation. This is an important reminder that sleep is not only about relaxation, it is also about positioning the body in a way that allows blood, oxygen, and vital nutrients to move freely throughout the night. Sometimes, the greatest risk for older adults is not movement, it is remaining completely still in the wrong position for too long. And that brings us to another extremely common sleeping posture that millions of people adopt without realizing what it may be doing to circulation. It often happens when someone lies on their side and slips an arm under the pillow for comfort. At first it feels natural. Many people say they fall asleep faster that way, but the pressure placed on nerves, blood vessels, and circulation during that position can quietly affect blood flow to the brain in ways that may surprise you. Let's look closely at what happens when that arm becomes trapped beneath the pillow while you sleep. Number 5. Sleeping on the right side with the arm under the pillow. Now let's talk about a sleeping position that many people find incredibly comfortable, especially as they grow older. It feels natural. It feels familiar. In fact, millions of adults fall asleep this way every night without ever questioning it. You lie down on your right side. A soft pillow supports your head. Sometimes another pillow rests between your knees to ease pressure on the hips. And almost automatically, out of long habit, you slide one arm underneath the pillow or beneath your head. For many people, this position has been part of their nightly routine for decades. It feels secure, almost instinctive. The body curls slightly forward, the shoulder settles into the mattress, and sleep comes easily. But from a neurological and circulatory perspective, this position can quietly create problems, especially for older adults whose blood vessels and nerves have already changed with age. When you lie on your right side and place your arm beneath your head or pillow, several important structures in the neck and shoulder area come under pressure. These include blood vessels that help deliver oxygen-rich blood to the brain, as well as veins responsible for returning blood back toward the heart. Among the most important of these vessels are the carotid arteries, which supply a large portion of the brain with oxygen and nutrients. There are also major vessels in the shoulder region that carry blood through the arms and upper chest before it returns to the heart. When body weight presses down on the shoulder and upper chest for long periods, these vessels can become partially compressed. Blood may still move through them, but the flow can slow or become uneven. For a young person with strong circulation, the body usually compensates quickly. The vessels adjust, pressure shifts, and the brain continues receiving adequate blood supply. However, as we age, arteries gradually stiffen and narrow. Circulation becomes less forgiving of prolonged compression. Even small restrictions in blood flow can begin to matter more. If blood flow slows for several hours during sleep, the risk of stagnation increases. When blood remains relatively still inside a vessel, it becomes more likely to thicken and form small clots. Most of the time, these clots remain harmless, but if one dislodges and travels upward toward the brain, it can block a small artery and interrupt oxygen delivery to brain tissue. The result can be a stroke. What makes this particularly concerning is that the process can unfold silently during sleep. A person may go to bed feeling perfectly healthy and wake up with weakness, confusion, or difficulty speaking, never realizing that the conditions began hours earlier while they were resting. Beyond circulation, this sleeping position can also affect the nervous system, running through the shoulder and often caused by temporary compression of these nerves. While occasional numbness may seem harmless, repeated nightly compression can disrupt normal nerve signaling and circulation in the surrounding tissues. Over time, this may contribute to subtle vascular and nerve stress that accumulates gradually. Older adults are particularly sensitive to these effects. With age, blood vessels lose elasticity and may narrow due to plaque buildup. Blood flow can become slightly thicker due to dehydration or metabolic changes. Nerve tissue also becomes more vulnerable to prolonged pressure. This means that a sleeping posture that once felt harmless at age 40 may place far greater strain on the body at age 70. Let me describe a situation that illustrates how quietly this can develop. An older gentleman in his mid-70s had slept on his right side for most of his adult life. It was simply the position that felt most comfortable to him. Every night, he tucked his arm beneath his pillow for extra neck support and drifted off almost immediately. One morning, his wife noticed something unusual. He seemed confused and had difficulty moving one of his legs. His speech sounded slightly slurred, and he struggled to stand. At the hospital, imaging revealed a stroke affecting the right side of his brain. Interestingly, he had none of the common major risk factors that doctors often expect. He did not smoke, he had no diabetes, and his cholesterol levels were relatively normal. Further evaluation showed narrowing in one of the arteries supplying blood to his brain. Doctors suspected that prolonged pressure and restricted blood flow during sleep may have contributed to the conditions that allowed a clot to form. He survived the event, but required rehabilitation to regain strength and coordination. Stories like this highlight an important lesson about sleep habits. The body can tolerate brief pressure or compression without difficulty, but when the same posture is repeated night after night for many years, the cumulative effect may begin to influence circulation and nerve health. Fortunately, the solution does not require drastic change. If you prefer sleeping on your side, it is usually safer to keep both arms positioned forward or resting alongside the body rather than trapped beneath the pillow. A supportive pillow that maintains proper neck alignment can reduce pressure on blood vessels and nerves. Some specialists also recommend sleeping on the left side rather than the right side, as this position may reduce pressure on certain blood vessels and support better circulation between the heart and brain. The key point is alignment. The neck should remain neutral, the shoulder should not carry excessive weight, and the arms should remain free rather than compressed under the body. These small adjustments can improve circulation throughout the night and reduce unnecessary stress on the delicate systems that keep the brain functioning. Most people never think about these details because sleep feels passive, but the body is working continuously while you rest. Blood is circulating, oxygen is being delivered, cells in the brain are repairing themselves and preparing you for the next day. The position you choose during those hours influences how smoothly those processes occur. But sleeping on the arm is not the only nighttime pattern that can quietly signal trouble. There is another habit that many people dismiss as simple restlessness: tossing and turning throughout the night. For some individuals, constant movement during sleep may actually be the brain's attempt to warn that something deeper is affecting circulation or oxygen levels. And understanding what that restlessness might be signaling could reveal an important message your brain has been trying to send all along. Number 6. Frequent tossing and turning during sleep. Now let's talk about another nighttime pattern that many older adults experience but rarely take seriously: frequent tossing and turning throughout the night. As we age, sleep often becomes lighter and more fragmented. You may fall asleep easily but wake up several times during the night. Sometimes you shift positions repeatedly, moving from one side to the other, adjusting your pillow, or waking briefly without even remembering it in the morning. Many people assume this is simply a normal part of getting older. They blame arthritis, joint discomfort, stress, or the need to use the bathroom during the night. While those factors certainly play a role, there is another possibility that deserves attention. Persistent restlessness during sleep may actually be a signal that your brain and body are struggling to maintain stable circulation and oxygen levels throughout the night. Sleep is not just a period of rest. It is one of the most important biological processes the brain relies on to maintain health. During deep sleep, blood pressure naturally decreases in a controlled and beneficial way. Blood vessels relax. Circulation stabilizes. The brain activates systems responsible for clearing metabolic waste and inflammatory substances that accumulate during waking hours. This nightly maintenance cycle helps protect the brain from long-term damage and keeps the circulatory system functioning smoothly. But when sleep becomes fragmented, when the body repeatedly wakes or shifts position, this process is constantly interrupted. Instead of entering long, restorative sleep cycles, the brain is forced to restart the process again and again. Each time the body suddenly rolls over or adjusts position, blood flow patterns change briefly. The neck moves, pressure on blood vessels shifts, and circulation to and from the brain fluctuates. In younger individuals with flexible arteries and strong cardiovascular systems, these momentary changes usually have little consequence. However, in older adults whose blood vessels have stiffened with age, those repeated fluctuations can place strain on delicate vascular structures. Arteries that are already narrowed may struggle to maintain consistent blood flow. Veins responsible for draining blood from the brain may briefly compress as the head and neck reposition. Over the course of an entire night, dozens or even hundreds of small adjustments in posture can lead to repeated changes in circulation. For some individuals, this unstable pattern may contribute to the formation of blood clots or create brief reductions in blood supply to certain areas of the brain. What is even more interesting is that frequent movement during sleep may not simply be a result of discomfort. In some cases, it may actually be the brain's attempt to correct underlying problems. When oxygen levels drop, when breathing becomes shallow, or when circulation becomes restricted in a particular position, the brain often responds by triggering movement. Rolling over, adjusting the neck, or shifting the body can temporarily restore airflow or improve blood flow. In other words, the tossing and turning you experience may be your brain's way of searching for a safer position. Let me describe a situation that illustrates how this pattern can develop. An older woman in her mid-70s had always considered herself a good sleeper. She went to bed at the same time every evening and believed she was getting 7 hours of sleep each night. Yet she often woke up feeling unusually tired. Her husband noticed something she had never realized. Throughout the night, she moved constantly, turning from one side to the other every few minutes. Sometimes she would adjust her pillow repeatedly or shift her shoulders as if trying to find a comfortable position. At first, they dismissed it as normal aging, but gradually she began experiencing morning headaches and occasional dizziness when standing. One night she woke with mild numbness in her hand and difficulty forming words clearly. Medical evaluation later revealed that she had experienced a small stroke during the night. Further testing suggested that her sleep had been severely fragmented. Her circulation during sleep was unstable, with brief periods where blood flow to parts of the brain was reduced. While her restless movements were not the sole cause, they reflected an underlying problem that had been developing quietly for months. Situations like this highlight why sleep quality matters just as much as sleep duration. Fragmented sleep can create several conditions that increase stroke risk in older adults. First, it prevents blood pressure from stabilizing during deep sleep. Normally, blood pressure dips slightly during the night, giving the heart and blood vessels a chance to recover. When sleep is repeatedly interrupted, this healthy dip may not occur. Second, frequent awakenings keep stress hormones elevated. Hormones like cortisol can remain higher than normal, which may trigger nighttime spikes in blood pressure. Third, poor sleep disrupts the brain's cleaning system, often called the glymphatic system, which helps remove waste products from brain tissue. When this system is impaired, inflammation in blood vessels may increase over time. Finally, unstable sleep creates constant changes in cerebral perfusion, the delicate balance of pressure required to keep blood moving smoothly through the brain's tiny capillaries. These are subtle processes, but when they occur night after night, they can gradually affect vascular health. The body often provides warning signs long before a serious event occurs. Waking up drenched in sweat, experiencing a racing heart during the night, or feeling breathless when you wake can indicate that your brain is struggling to regulate oxygen or circulation. Morning headaches, dizziness, or unexplained fatigue may also suggest that sleep quality is not as restorative as it should be. Rather than dismissing these symptoms as simple aging, it may be helpful to view them as messages from the body. Improving sleep quality can make a meaningful difference. Simple steps, such as reducing caffeine or alcohol before bedtime, maintaining a cool and quiet sleeping environment, and using supportive pillows to stabilize the body, can help minimize unnecessary movement during sleep. A body pillow placed along the side of the torso can support the hips and shoulders, reducing the need to constantly shift positions. Staying well hydrated during the day and practicing slow breathing or relaxation techniques before bed can also encourage deeper, more stable sleep cycles. If restlessness persists, or if a partner notices frequent movements, loud snoring, or breathing pauses during the night, a sleep study may provide valuable insight. Many conditions that disturb sleep, such as sleep apnea or nighttime oxygen fluctuations, can be treated effectively once identified. The goal is not simply to sleep longer, but to sleep in a way that allows the brain to complete its nightly repair and circulation cycles without interruption. When sleep becomes a battleground of constant movement and awakening, the body often remembers the stress even if the mind does not. But restless sleep is only one piece of the puzzle. There is another quiet risk factor that often begins before you even lie down for the night. It has nothing to do with pillows, blankets, or sleeping positions. Instead, it involves a simple routine that many people overlook, a small tablet or capsule that helps control blood pressure, heart rhythm, or circulation. Skipping that medication, even occasionally, can dramatically change what happens inside your blood vessels while you sleep. And understanding why that matters could prevent a life-changing stroke before morning arrives. Number 7. Sleeping after skipping blood pressure or heart medication. Now let's move to a risk that doesn't come from pillows, blankets, or sleeping positions, but from something far more subtle. A simple routine that many older adults follow every single day: taking medication. For millions of seniors, daily medication becomes part of life. A pill in the morning, another in the evening. Over time, the routine becomes automatic. You hardly think about it anymore. The bottle sits on the bedside table or in a weekly pill organizer, quietly waiting for the moment you reach for it. Most nights the routine goes smoothly, but occasionally something interrupts it. Perhaps you feel perfectly fine and assume missing one dose won't matter. Maybe you fall asleep on the couch and forget entirely. Sometimes the prescription runs out and you plan to refill it the next day, and so that evening dose is skipped. For many medications, this may not cause immediate problems, but when it comes to drugs that control blood pressure, regulate heart rhythm, or prevent clot formation, missing even a single dose, especially before sleep, can quietly set the stage for serious consequences overnight. To understand why, it helps to know how the body normally regulates blood pressure throughout a 24-hour cycle. During the day, blood pressure naturally rises as the body remains active. The heart pumps more vigorously to supply muscles and organs with oxygen and nutrients. But as evening approaches and the body prepares for sleep, blood pressure normally begins to decline. This nighttime dip is important. It gives the heart and blood vessels a chance to rest and recover from the stress of daytime activity. However, many older adults no longer experience this healthy nighttime dip. Conditions such as hypertension, atrial fibrillation, and other cardiovascular disorders can disrupt the body's natural rhythm. Blood pressure may remain elevated even during sleep, placing additional strain on arteries that are already less flexible with age. This is where medication becomes essential. Drugs that control blood pressure, stabilize heart rhythm, or prevent clot formation help maintain balance when the body can no longer regulate these systems on its own. They act as a protective buffer, keeping circulation stable while you sleep. But when that medication is skipped, even once, that protective layer disappears. During the quiet hours of the night, often between 2 and 6 in the morning, blood pressure may begin to rise unchecked. The heart may beat faster or more irregularly. Blood vessels that are already narrowed from age or plaque buildup must suddenly handle higher pressure without support. Inside those vessels, turbulent blood flow can irritate the delicate lining of the arteries. When that lining becomes stressed, platelets, the tiny cells responsible for clotting, become more active. Their job is to stop bleeding, but under the wrong conditions, they may begin sticking together inside the bloodstream. This is how clots can form. If a clot develops and travels through the bloodstream toward the brain, it can block one of the arteries that supplies oxygen to brain tissue. When that happens, a stroke occurs. The frightening part is that this process can begin while a person is asleep, long before any warning signs appear. Many strokes occur in the early morning hours, just before or shortly after waking. This timing is not random. It is often linked to overnight changes in blood pressure and circulation. Let me describe a situation that illustrates how quickly this can happen. A man in his early 70s had been managing mild hypertension for several years. His condition was stable and controlled with a single medication taken each evening before bed. He lived an active lifestyle, walked regularly, and maintained a relatively healthy diet. One evening, he became distracted while watching television and forgot to take his medication. At the time, he thought nothing of it. He planned to take the pill in the morning and assumed missing a single dose would make little difference. During the night, however, his blood pressure rose significantly while he slept. By morning, he felt unusually confused and struggled to form clear words. His wife noticed that one side of his face looked slightly uneven and immediately sought medical help. Imaging at the hospital revealed that he had suffered a stroke caused by a clot blocking a vessel supplying blood to the brain. Further evaluation suggested that the sudden rise in blood pressure during the night may have contributed to the clot forming. The missed medication had removed the protective control his body relied on. Fortunately, he survived and began rehabilitation soon afterward. But the experience permanently changed his approach to medication. He began using reminders, alarms, and a weekly pill organizer to ensure that he never missed another dose. Stories like this highlight an important truth about aging and cardiovascular health. In younger individuals, the body often has enough flexibility to compensate for small disruptions. But as arteries stiffen and circulation slows with age, the margin for error becomes much smaller. Blood vessels are less tolerant of sudden pressure changes. Platelets become more reactive. Recovery from circulation disturbances takes longer. That means consistency becomes critically important. Medications prescribed for blood pressure, heart rhythm, or clot prevention are not simply routine habits. They are protective tools designed to keep the circulatory system stable every hour of the day, including the hours spent asleep. Skipping them occasionally may seem harmless, but it removes a safeguard that the brain relies on during the night. Fortunately, preventing this risk is straightforward. Setting a nightly alarm, using a clearly labeled pill organizer, or placing medication in a visible location near the bed can help maintain a consistent routine. Some people also ask a partner or family member to remind them until the habit becomes automatic. These small steps may seem simple, but they can protect the delicate balance that keeps blood flowing safely to the brain. When it comes to stroke prevention, consistency is often more important than perfection. But medication routines are not the only factor that influences what happens during the night. Sometimes the environment itself, the temperature of the room, the way the neck is supported, even the air moving across the body while you sleep, can affect circulation in subtle ways. Many people never realize how quickly cold air, poor neck support, or improper positioning can influence the blood vessels that supply the brain. And understanding what happens when you sleep in a cold room without proper neck support may reveal another hidden risk that few people ever think about. Number 8. Sleeping in cold rooms without proper neck support. Now let's talk about another nighttime habit that many people believe is perfectly healthy: sleeping in a very cold room. For many adults, a cool bedroom feels refreshing. The crisp air, the cool sheets, and the comfort of wrapping yourself in a blanket can make sleep feel deeper and more relaxing. Some people even lower the thermostat intentionally because they've heard that cooler temperatures promote better sleep. And to a certain extent, that idea is true. A slightly cool room can help the body settle into sleep more easily. But when the environment becomes too cold, especially for older adults, and when that cold air combines with poor neck support, it can create conditions that quietly affect blood flow to the brain during the night. Most people never consider how temperature and posture interact with the circulatory system while we sleep. As the body ages, its ability to regulate temperature becomes less efficient. The mechanisms that once kept blood vessels relaxed and circulation stable begin to change. Blood vessels respond more dramatically to environmental temperature, especially cold. When the body is exposed to cold air for extended periods, blood vessels naturally tighten. This process is called vasoconstriction. It is the body's way of conserving heat by narrowing the vessels near the surface of the skin. However, this tightening effect does not only occur in the hands and feet. Blood vessels throughout the body, including those in the neck, can also respond to cold by narrowing. This is where the situation becomes more concerning. The neck contains two of the most important pathways supplying blood to the brain. These vessels deliver oxygen and nutrients that brain cells depend on every second of the day. When the body is exposed to cold air during sleep, those vessels may narrow slightly. At the same time, if the neck is not properly supported by a pillow, the head may tilt forward, bend downward, or rotate to one side for several hours. That misalignment can place additional pressure on the same blood vessels already responding to the cold. For a younger person with flexible arteries and strong circulation, the body usually compensates quickly. But in older adults, arteries often become stiffer due to natural aging or plaque buildup. Blood may move more slowly through the vascular system. The margin for maintaining smooth circulation becomes smaller. When cold-induced vessel tightening combines with poor neck alignment, blood flow toward the brain may become less efficient during sleep. Over the course of many nights, that reduced circulation can create conditions where blood becomes sluggish in certain areas. When blood flow slows significantly, the chance of clot formation increases. A clot that travels into the brain's circulation can interrupt oxygen delivery to brain tissue and cause a stroke. Let me describe a situation that illustrates how this pattern can develop. An older woman in her late 70s had always preferred sleeping in a very cool room. Even during winter, she liked to leave a window slightly open because the fresh air helped her feel comfortable at night. Her sleeping posture was also very consistent. She used a very flat pillow and often curled forward slightly, allowing her chin to tilt downward toward her chest. For years, she believed this routine was harmless. One morning, however, her family noticed something unusual. She was awake but unable to focus clearly, and her speech sounded weak and slurred. She struggled to sit upright without assistance. Medical evaluation revealed that she had experienced a stroke affecting a region of the brain supplied by blood vessels that travel through the neck. Further assessment showed that her neck posture during sleep may have been compressing these vessels, while cold temperatures caused additional narrowing. Over time, these combined factors may have contributed to reduced blood flow and clot formation. Although she survived and began rehabilitation, her recovery required significant physical therapy and patience. Stories like this remind us that sleep habits that once felt harmless can have different effects as the body ages. Cold temperatures cause blood vessels to constrict. Poor neck support can misalign those vessels. Together, they can reduce oxygen delivery to the brain during the very hours when the body is supposed to be restoring itself. Another factor that often goes unnoticed is age-related changes in the cervical spine. Many older adults develop some degree of cervical spondylosis, a common condition involving gradual wear and tear of the neck vertebrae and surrounding structures. These changes can alter the way blood vessels pass through the neck. When the head is positioned improperly on a pillow, especially in a cold environment where vessels are already constricted, the combination may place additional stress on circulation. The good news is that small adjustments can make a meaningful difference. A bedroom temperature that is cool but not cold is generally ideal. For many older adults, a range around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, allows comfortable sleep without excessive vessel constriction. Just as important is proper neck support. A medium firm pillow that keeps the head aligned with the spine can prevent the neck from bending too far forward or twisting sharply to one side. The goal is to maintain a neutral position where the airway remains open and blood vessels are not compressed. Avoid sleeping with the chin pressed tightly against the chest or with the head angled dramatically to the side. These may seem like small details, but during 8 hours of sleep, they can influence how effectively blood reaches the brain. Many people only realize the importance of these factors after a health scare forces them to reconsider habits they once ignored. Yet the truth is that the aging body responds differently to environmental conditions than it did decades earlier. What once felt comfortable may now require small adjustments to remain safe. But temperature and posture are not the only nighttime factors that influence stroke risk. Sometimes the trigger begins before you even lie down. It can come from what you eat or drink late in the evening, especially heavy meals or alcohol consumed shortly before bedtime. These habits may affect heart rhythm, blood pressure, and circulation during the night in ways that most people never suspect. And understanding what happens inside the body when you go to sleep immediately after a heavy meal or several drinks may reveal one of the most overlooked stroke triggers of all. Number 9. Sleeping immediately after heavy drinking or a large meal. Now we come to the final habit, and in many ways it is one of the most overlooked. For many people, especially later in life, the evening routine feels comforting and familiar. A satisfying dinner, perhaps a warm plate of food shared with family, followed by a small drink to relax before bed. It feels peaceful. It feels earned after a long day. Many people even believe that a full stomach and a glass of wine or whiskey help them sleep more deeply. But the truth is, going to bed immediately after a heavy meal or alcohol can quietly place stress on the brain and circulatory system during the very hours when your body is supposed to be recovering. The aging body processes food and alcohol very differently than it did decades earlier. When you eat a large meal, especially one rich in fats, salt, or sugar, your digestive system suddenly becomes extremely active. The stomach, intestines, and liver require large amounts of blood flow in order to break down food and absorb nutrients. To support this process, the body redirects circulation toward the digestive organs. This shift in blood flow is completely normal. However, it also means that for a period of time, slightly less blood may be circulating toward other parts of the body, including the brain. In a healthy younger adult, this temporary redistribution rarely causes problems. But in older adults whose arteries may already be narrowed or less flexible, even small reductions in circulation can become more significant. When you lie down shortly after a heavy meal, your body is forced to juggle two demanding processes at the same time: digestion and sleep regulation. Digestion keeps the body active. Sleep requires the body to slow down. This conflict can lead to unstable blood pressure and inconsistent circulation during the night. Now add alcohol to the equation, and the situation becomes even more complicated. Alcohol initially acts as a vasodilator, meaning it relaxes and widens blood vessels. This is why many people feel warm, flushed, or sleepy after a drink. But as the body begins to metabolize alcohol, the opposite effect can occur. Blood vessels may suddenly tighten again. Blood pressure may rise. The heart may beat faster or irregularly as it tries to restore balance. In older adults, these rapid shifts can place strain on the cardiovascular system. Alcohol also dehydrates the body, thickening the blood slightly and making it more prone to clot formation. At the same time, it can interfere with normal heart rhythm, sometimes triggering irregular beats that disrupt circulation. When these effects occur during sleep, when the body is lying still for hours, they can create conditions where blood flow becomes unstable. If a clot forms and travels into the brain's circulation, it can block a vessel and cause a stroke. And because this process may happen during the quiet hours of the night, many people experience symptoms only when they wake up in the morning. Let me describe a situation that illustrates how easily this can happen. An older man in his mid-70s had a simple evening routine that rarely changed. Dinner in the early evening, followed by a small drink while watching television, and then bed shortly afterward. One holiday evening, he enjoyed a particularly large meal with family, rich foods, dessert, and his usual drink. Feeling relaxed and satisfied, he went to bed not long afterward. During the night, however, his body was dealing with several competing stresses at once. Digestion was drawing large amounts of blood toward the stomach and intestines. Alcohol was altering blood vessel behavior and affecting hydration levels. Meanwhile, his cardiovascular system was trying to regulate blood pressure during sleep. By early morning, his circulation had become unstable enough that a clot formed and traveled to a blood vessel supplying the brain. When his wife tried to wake him, he was confused and unable to speak clearly. He survived the stroke, but it permanently affected his speech and daily independence. Situations like this remind us that even routines that feel harmless can have unexpected effects as the body ages. After the age of 60, digestion slows down significantly. Food remains in the stomach longer, and the body continues directing blood flow toward the digestive system for several hours. Alcohol, meanwhile, disrupts sleep architecture. Although it may make you feel drowsy at first, alcohol-induced sleep is often fragmented and less restorative. Breathing patterns may change, dehydration can occur, and heart rhythm may become less stable. Together, these factors can create fluctuations in blood pressure and circulation during the early morning hours, precisely when many strokes occur. The goal is not to eliminate enjoyment from life. Food and social rituals are an important part of well-being. But timing and moderation become increasingly important with age. Allowing 2 to 3 hours between dinner and bedtime gives the body time to begin digestion before sleep begins. Drinking water with meals helps maintain proper hydration and keeps blood from becoming overly concentrated. Limiting alcohol, especially late in the evening, reduces sudden shifts in blood pressure and heart rhythm during sleep. Choosing lighter meals at night rather than heavy, salty, or sugary foods can also reduce the strain placed on the digestive system while you rest. These small adjustments may seem simple, but they allow the brain and circulatory system to remain stable during the night. Because when it comes to stroke, the danger often does not arrive with dramatic warning signs. Sometimes it appears quietly, hidden within everyday routines that feel comfortable and familiar. A heavy meal, a late drink, a quick decision to go straight to bed. Individually, they may seem harmless, but together, they can influence the delicate balance that keeps blood flowing safely to the brain. Now that we have explored the 9 nighttime habits that may quietly increase stroke risk, an important question naturally follows. What does safe sleep actually look like? What simple changes can you begin tonight, not just to sleep more comfortably, but to protect your brain, your memory, and your independence for the years ahead? Final wake-up call: sleep isn't just rest, it's protection. Let's bring everything together for a moment, because what you've learned today is more than a list of sleep tips. It's a roadmap for protecting one of the most precious organs in your body, your brain. Sleep is often treated as a simple daily routine, something we do automatically at the end of a long day. But in reality, sleep is one of the most powerful biological processes your body has. It is during those quiet nighttime hours that your brain restores circulation, clears metabolic waste, balances hormones, and prepares every system in your body for the day ahead. In many ways, sleep is not simply rest. Sleep is protection. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to acknowledge something important. The fact that you are still here means you care about your health, you care about your future, and most importantly, you care about protecting your independence and quality of life as the years move forward. That kind of awareness is powerful. Knowledge at this stage of life is not just interesting information, it is a form of protection. Every new insight you gain becomes a tool you can use to care for your body more wisely. Over the course of this discussion, we have uncovered 9 common nighttime habits that many people believe are harmless. In fact, some of them feel comfortable, familiar, even soothing. They are routines built over decades, ways of sleeping that simply feel normal. But the truth is that the aging body operates under different rules than it once did. Blood vessels stiffen, circulation slows, oxygen delivery becomes more delicate, and habits that once caused no harm can begin to place quiet stress on the brain. Think about the patterns we discussed: sleeping flat on your back with no pillow, turning your face down and twisting your neck for hours, falling asleep in a recliner with your chin tucked forward, allowing heavy blankets or body weight to compress circulation, tossing and turning throughout the night without stable support, skipping important medications before bedtime, sleeping in cold environments without proper neck alignment, or going to bed immediately after a heavy meal or alcohol. Each of these habits may appear small on the surface, but when repeated night after night, they can gradually create conditions where blood flow becomes slower, thicker, and less stable. And when circulation slows inside vessels that may already be narrowed with age, the possibility of clot formation quietly increases. In a younger body, circulation often adjusts quickly and easily, but in an older body, the margin for error becomes smaller. The brain depends on a steady and uninterrupted supply of oxygen-rich blood. When that supply becomes unstable, even briefly, the consequences can be serious. This is why strokes that occur during sleep are often so surprising. Many people go to bed feeling perfectly normal, only to wake up hours later with symptoms they never expected. Slurred speech, weakness in the arm or leg, confusion, difficulty walking. In some cases, the damage has already occurred before anyone even realizes what happened. But here is the most important truth I want you to take away from all of this. Many strokes that occur during sleep are preventable. Let that idea settle in for a moment. They are not always random. They are not always unavoidable. In many cases, they are influenced by habits that slowly developed over years, habits we never questioned because no one ever explained their impact. And the moment awareness enters the picture, the power to change appears. You still have control over how you sleep. You still have the ability to protect your brain in ways that can make a real difference. Even small adjustments can dramatically improve circulation, oxygen delivery, and nighttime stability. For example, elevating your head slightly during sleep helps gravity support healthy blood flow. Sleeping on your side with proper neck alignment reduces strain on the arteries that supply the brain. Choosing supportive pillows keeps the cervical spine in a neutral position so vessels are not compressed or twisted. Creating a sleep environment that is cool but not overly cold allows blood vessels to remain relaxed rather than constricted. Staying hydrated supports smoother circulation throughout the night. Avoiding heavy meals or alcohol shortly before bed prevents sudden shifts in blood pressure and digestion that can disrupt nighttime stability. And perhaps most importantly, taking medications exactly as prescribed helps maintain consistent control over blood pressure, heart rhythm, and circulation, all of which play critical roles in preventing stroke. None of these adjustments require dramatic lifestyle overhauls. They are small shifts in awareness, small decisions made every evening before you close your eyes, but those small decisions add up. Night after night, quietly protecting the delicate systems that keep your brain functioning at its best. In a world where many aspects of aging feel beyond our control, sleep is one area where your choices still carry enormous influence. You are never too old to improve how you care for your body. You are never too late to protect your brain. And you are certainly never too late to learn how to sleep in a way that supports not only comfort, but long-term health. When I speak to older adults about sleep, I often remind them of something simple but powerful. It is not only how long you sleep that matters. It is how wisely you sleep. Because the way you position your body, the habits you follow before bed, and the environment you create around you all influence what happens inside your brain during the night. So tonight, when you prepare for bed, take a moment to pause and ask yourself a simple question. Is the way I'm sleeping protecting my brain or placing it under stress? That single moment of awareness can lead to changes that protect your speech, your memory, your balance, your independence, the very abilities that allow you to live life on your own terms. Sleep wisely, and you protect far more than a good night's rest. You protect the essence of who you are. Before we finish, I would truly love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect on what you've learned today. What is one habit you plan to change starting tonight? Sometimes sharing that commitment helps turn knowledge into action. If this discussion helped you see sleep in a new light, let me know in the comments by writing the number 1. And if some of these ideas were already familiar to you, feel free to write 0 instead. Your feedback helps guide future conversations and allows us to continue sharing information that truly matters. And if you believe this message could help someone you care about, a parent, a friend, or a loved one, consider sharing it with them. Sometimes the simplest knowledge can protect someone from a life-changing event. Thank you for taking the time to invest in your health today. And remember, the way you sleep tonight may quietly shape the way you live tomorrow.